We're back for more Coffee and Conversation with Collette, the Friday edition. It's a little bit after 8 o'clock a.m. So if you're just tuning in, we're talking about how we become complacent. Are we happy being black and traumatized in America? And specifically, we discussed how it looks like as adults preparing our young people to go back to school, having a familiar structure, creating that, what the new family nucleus looks like. It looks like that we don't even understand what family looks like anymore. The dismantling, if you will, of education and how we in that trauma are supposed to excel and thrive. The difference in the brain and the mind, there is a difference. We've talked about it all. And maybe the bigger part that if we are supposed to be lions, we roar. Do you remember that clip? And I'm going to get back to the lines. All the lines are lit, everyone. We're going to get you. Remember the clip that Cat Williams had a little while ago when he was talking about, remember the baby that was in the zoo and they dropped the baby and they were talking about the baby being mauled by the lion and what was going to happen in the lion and his position was that the lion is in a fake habitat. So before I get King back on the line to continue his thoughts and complete them and go on, what did he say? That the lion was removed from his habitat and put in a fake habitat. And so if indeed we believe that we are the greatness and we have the strength and power of the lion, but we are in a fake habitat. So that has lulled us into where we are and who we are and to accept the trauma. So now the lion doesn't have to go out and hunt for the prey anymore. They just throw a piece of steak down into his bowl. And he just sits there and waits for it. And so you all remember in the clip, then everybody had gathered around the lion cage at the zoo. And so the lion was talking to his peers and he said, look, everybody, look. They're all here and they're waiting for me and watch me now. Here I go. And then he reared up really quickly. And remember, he came up and he said, roar! And then all he saw was these flashing lights. The people were taking a picture of him. No one was afraid. No one ran. No one moved. No one did anything. And he said, well, maybe I'm not a lion. Maybe I'm a vicious koala bear. Did you think about that? Because we have been lulled into this habitat because of trauma, and we can't walk in our greatness. King, please, thanks for your patience. Continue and finish up your thought before I get everybody else in.
And that was excellent. That said, because like you say, there's what it says. There's a lion asleep in Judah.
Yeah.
Who can awaken him? Well, a pussycat can't awaken a lion. No. It takes another lion to awaken a lion.
Yes.
And that lion has to be the one who created and made us up, or whether he has to come.
Yes.
And he comes with a word.
Yes.
And that word begins to change, your thinking pattern or whatever.
Yes.
And so now, most of us don't even realize the battle that is going on right now between God and Satan.
Okay.
See, there's a small group, understand, that rules that 10% rules. Mm-hmm. And they rule, understand, in a negative way or trick knowledge and whatnot.
Sure.
And then you have that one that comes as lightning shining out of the east, under which so shall the coming of the Son of Man be.
Okay.
And he comes where there's a carcass that's once had life, but it's laying out there dead, and there's eagles all around it.
Okay.
And that carcass really is the black man and woman who are in America who's dead.
Okay.
Mentally, spiritually, and morally.
All right.
But he come to awaken that bring light back into that dead carcass.
Okay.
Which is us or whatever.
Yeah.
And so we're gradually coming to life, but there's a war. You got to realize that you are at war, whatever.
Sure.
And when we think about understanding, even in producing offsprings,
yeah,
and the way we may be producing them,
sure,
we got to be able to see the overall bigger picture that God is the author of all life.
Sure.
And so his wound, which is the black woman, his wound is its laboratory. It's a black woman's wound.
Right.
And those people understand who knows that they're sitting outside of your black womb, waiting on that child that will come into this world that may bring an end to it. So they're always standing outside of the womb of the black woman because they know that's how God operates.
Well, stay there for a minute, King. I appreciate your call. I'm going to get everybody else in.
Love you.
Love you more. But the problem with that is, and don't you always have those conversations with folks, and forgive me for saying this, but I'm going to say it. You know how when you see people who've had a multitude of children, and you're like, well, how are they having all these children? Like Six just said, like you had this one child, and you had the other child, and you had the other child. And you're like, how are you okay with having all these children? But you got other people that you believe have the structure intact and the responsibility in raising a child, and then they only have one child. And you're like, well, why aren't you having more children? And they're like, well, no, because it's enough for me to be able to take care and equip this one child to the best of my ability now, and I can't bring other children in and believe that I can provide for them the same way. I know you all thought about it. Thanks for your patience. Good morning to you. Caller, you there? Good morning. No? Okay. Thanks for your patience. Good morning.
Assalamu alaikum.
Welcome, brother. Walaikum assalam, Brother Thomas.
We talked yesterday, right?
Yes, we do. We did.
And we talked about an infection of the brain.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why the infection of the brain is because and the king just said, you've been led away from yourself. All these years, the influence of TV, radio, the movie house, especially that TV.
Yeah.
I said to you, my mom and my dad had a TV in 1950. I told you, I talked to you about it, and I told you what to say to rock. I know what it feels, and I told you what I said about my father, right?
Yes.
My mother hustled and did all she could to get that money to build those 6 rooms to the house, and she paid for the house.
Yes.
She paid for our first car in cash. This lady came with a purpose to Detroit.
Yes.
And I said, the Muslim part of our culture, when you had Son of Man with you.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I was always listening to the Muslim part who was coming in and playing those numbers because they was talking directly to me.
Okay.
My great aunt, once my first cousin aunt came to get us, my great aunt said, I want Frank because Corrine told me he was the one who listened, and he was the one always there listening. When the Muslim part of the culture, all of them was telling, well, tell him to go somewhere. See, my mother said, no, he'll stay right here and listen to y'all because he loves and know what's going on because you're talking to him how to grow, how to be the father, how to be the keeper, how to be the protector, how to be the strong teacher. And I told you, now you that by yourself because you got to take care of yourself. Now, if you're not being the mother completely, if you're not being the keeper for your finance and all the things it takes for you to survive, now let's go back to the keeper. Father Earth, and I said this to you.
Yes.
If you are the true keeper of the earth, that's the most important part of you, Father of the earth. You're supposed to take care of the survival. My wife did not work for the first 25 years or more for my daughter because she was supposed to be here to make sure that my daughter have someone here to talk to her, to give her those things so that she's going back and forth to school.
Amen.
While I'm out there working, then when I come in, then I teach. I had my daughter and wife go to the art of karate, not just for the defense, it's the communication, the socialism, and the defense of the mind. Yes. And I said this to you also. I'm going in sections. As you grow, you get older. Yes. As far as Alzheimer's disease and all the things that you go with, if you're not paying attention to yourself as you grow, because as you grow, you're getting, the mother of the earth gives you the balance. How can you grow without her? How can you laugh and talk?
Yes.
The king talked about the lion. I'm going another section.
Sure.
You got the 5-headed beast.
Okay.
The lion, the leopard, the bear. The other one I've forgotten that one. I missed it. But the other one is the male, the the father of the earth, who got teeth and hands of brain. You talking about the brain, he talked about the brain, and you talk about the spirit part. When you listen to the eyes and the ears, they absorb all the truth, for the truth, the knowledge, the understanding, and the wisdom. Now go back to the father, you sorry, you piece of crap. If you doing what you're supposed to do, then the mother who got all them children to be able to be comfortable to raise her right, and you should also have culture. I told you, Collette, I got books in here, and I said the average person don't have nothing about culture.
Yeah.
They don't talk about who the mother is and who the father is. The father, most important part of him is that, and I said the most important part of you is that love to being a mother.
Yes.
If you're not fully in tune with that one union with yourself, that's where the eyes and ears that listen to you.
Yes.
Oh, and the eyes and ears listen, that brings you everything. It brings everything into focus.
Yes.
Only way you can bring that into focus, because if you ain't having us, we can't get out here and laugh and talk about the line, roar, and you can't get the knockout and all the rest of it. You can't say all things without you.
Right, right.
The female seed is so important. I said to you, if the female seed was not in the earth would die, because the female seed is there for you to grow. God has put it on earth as it is in heaven.
Yeah.
You got your heaven and hell right inside of you.
Yes.
And that's your right and wrong. What do you choose? Do you choose to be a father? If you're the true father, poverty would not exist. The woman would be able to do what she designed to do. And when y'all come together, if she has to get up and work, then she works. But if you're not doing what you designed to do as a father to keep her, and when she does what she do, you said something between your mother and father. We never made a difference between the mother and the father.
Yeah.
She said what she said, I said what I said, and then we brought them together and sat down and talked. Well, the daughter said, Daddy, you said this, and you said, and mother said this. I said, now, when you bring that one union together, that meant for you to grow well, so that you know, if you were single, you have to be the one. You have to be the mother, the keeper who take care of your finances so you can survive, and the protector. Now listen to the protector.
Yes.
The protector protects everything about you and all the levels, including being ready to die for yourself to defend that.
Yes.
The strong teacher is the one that keeps it all in order. So that means Alzheimer's, all the rest of that stuff. But go back. Let's go back. And also, Allah said, I divide your enemy in 7 different ways, and I'll bring your enemy to your feet. The European culture is at your feet right now. You didn't listen to the Muslim part of our culture. They've been telling you the truth all this time.
Okay.
And every time you turn around, you're too busy telling Farrakhan, son of man. Also, look in Revelations.
Okay.
Daniel. Revelation talks about the Son of Man.
Okay.
Son of Man that's there in that building, he already knows that. When Elijah Muhammad came, before God became, they talked about Elijah Muhammad. Then Father Muhammad eventually brought him to who he was. And then, back then, they was talking about the Son of Man. Now, Son of Man have brought it up and told you, look, I'm getting ready to become who I am.
Okay.
Talk about from the gray head to the girt to the brass, who he was. Also, it talks about the long piece that went, and it talks about the furnace. Go and look in the Revelation and Daniel. Revelation and Daniel talks a lot. And I say this to you again. I leave this to you, all of you out there that call yourself father. If we was a true father, the mother wouldn't have no problem teaching what she's supposed to teach. And then when y'all come together, then y'all discuss it and make that one union. Until you be the father of the earth, the keeper.
Yeah, brother.
You're going to always be a lost soul.
Amen.
And they've been tricking you all this time, and you still a trick. It's like a rose.
Knock
you
them
don't
out.
like what I said. That's why I told you in rock. Beat up on them.
Yeah.
Give them a knockout. You got to trick them into being themselves.
Ah.
I know we can do it.
Yes, sir.
We still got enough. We got you and everybody else. I love you with you always.
I love you with you as well.
I love you.
I love you more. Thank you. Well, he just told us now. He just got to knock them out with the truth. And the truth is, I believe it. Like, until we realize that we are a body, we are a functioning unit and an organism. It only works when we're together. Remember, it used to take a village. I don't know. We just got away from all that. We got away from the village. We got away from us being better. We got away from roles. Think about there was a time, and callers I see, I'm about to get to the line, go back to the line. But think about there was a time when, absolutely to Brother Thompson's point, the mother was in the home. Hello? Don't take away and negate the importance of a home, managing a home, the CEO of the home. That is a full-time business. You have to figure out how to plan. You got inventory. You got logistics. You have, do you need me to keep going? The structure of keeping the people together in a home, the human resources, and then the maintenance and all the components of the home, time management. You got to get the young people off to school, everything that you need to do while you're in the midst of that, preparing dinner, going to grocery, doing the laundry, whatever you need to prepare. If you have your own business, getting that work done, then managing when it's time for children to get out of school, where they need to go with their activities, what they need to do to enrich themselves, then prepare for dinner. That's a full-time job. But see, something happened along the way because we didn't want that. When we had that structure in place, we fell into this whole liberation thing, and y'all don't have to like it. I'm about to say it. We fell into it, but for women of color, it took us out the households. That's where it was a problem for us. It took us out the households. The white women didn't want to be at home every day, and they wanted to get out and prove that they could work as hard as a man and bring home the bacon and fry it up in the pan and never forget you, man. That's too much. Who wrote that jingle? Remember that? I can bring home the bacon. I remember that commercial like it was yesterday. And you had the woman sitting there, and was it for a perfume or something? I can bring home the bacon, fry it up in a pan, and never let you forget you're a man because I'm a woman. Was it Ajani or something crazy? So I got to do all this stuff. Then I got to be all that at home. And then it makes me a woman because I'm Superwoman and I got the cape on the side. Stop it. And that's been to our detriment. Because you think it's more powerful to be defined by what happens in this world than taking care of your home. Who wants to do the heavy lifting? You all decided you want to do that? I don't have to do the heavy lifting out in the world. Why can't I be the heavy lifter in my household? Why can't I then have a skill set that provides a business structure and some revenue to generate in my home to take care of my home and to nourish my children and to be better citizens in this society and to have an impact and to make a difference and understand who we are and that we're better together than apart? But again, maybe we're just happy to be traumatized in America. Thanks for your patience. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, how are you, Collette?
Amazing, Kim. How are you?
Wonderful, thank you.
Awesome.
I just want to chime in on your topic today.
Please.
You were talking about the woman who said to the child, who traumatized the child by saying, sit the F down, okay?
Yes.
And I can't tell you how many times I've seen that same scenario here in Detroit. And I just want to talk about one in particular, and it wasn't just the mother.
Sure.
It was the mother and the father walking along, a small child in a carriage, and an older child, about 6 years old, who could walk. Okay. And, the older child was being a child.
Right.
She was kicking her legs, trying to have fun, trying to entertain herself. And the father told her to stop, of course, once, told her to stop twice, and she didn't. And then the father hit this child, about a 6-year-old child, in the chest so hard, Collette, that I heard it. I mean, you had to hear that. He hit her like a man.
Wow.
And then the child is crying, can't stop. So instead of trying to comfort the child, he takes the child and gives it to the mama who already has a newborn in the carriage. So I just want to say I've seen this scenario played out so many times in Detroit, and I implore these parents, these younger parents, please stop that. It traumatized the people around them to hear him hit that child that hard. You can hear it. He hit her like a man. Like a man, Collette. And it just, it almost makes me cry now to think how you could treat that child in that way. Instead of trying to comfort her, too, giving her to the mama, saying, now it's your problem.
And so think about think about what Kim just shared. So, and this is such a different dynamic as well, because if it is the dad to the daughter, and he then addresses her in that way and handles her that way, then what in her psyche does that say? That if my dad treated me this way, and clearly that's just, if he's done that out in public, no telling what he does at home, that is not the first time. And so if that's going to be a repeat activity of how he engages you, then will she grow up to expect that from men?
Right.
And so then if
Absolutely.
she will then be looking for suitors or men. If he puts his hands on her, if he treats her in some kind of way, then she'll use that as a justification, because my dad used to do that because I didn't do what he said, or that's how he got me in line, or that's how he showed he loved me. And so he loves me when he puts his hands on me. He loves me when he talks strong and is verbally abusive to me. That's abuse. You shouldn't be traumatized. And let me just tell you, to Kim's point, adults for children and adults to adults, your mouth, if you have to be in a space where, and I get it, we get overheated, we get that, I get it. But anytime you feel that you have to say things out of your mouth that threaten people, that the most worst things that you can think about saying, you don't have any problem with spewing that out to try to show some power or some control or some authority, or then putting your hands on them, man, bye. No, like, see, like, really? Like, we're not going to do that. You're not going to say whatever you want to say to me. If that is the point, if you are so out of control in your person and in your interactive skills that you cannot communicate without being disruptive and disrespectful and then going to put your hands on people, then you need to be someplace by yourself. You don't need to be with any other adults. You don't need to be with children. You just need to be somewhere by yourself trying to get it together.
Absolutely. And I do want to just say one other thing, Collette.
Please.
I mean, I am ashamed of myself. I mean, me and the other adults who were sitting around who didn't, I mean, because of course we wanted to. I mean, everybody turned like, what was that? You know, everybody, I'm ashamed of myself for not getting up and just saying something like, I should have gotten up and said something, but I know what that would have turned into. So, I mean, I don't know, maybe if I don't even know the answer. I just wanted to share the story with you.
No. And let me just tell you, you're not alone, because that's how I felt yesterday. I mean, there's no way. This woman was sitting right behind me. When she said it, there's no way, because my whole body tensed up. Just like, I was just like this. So I know she knows I heard it. She knows that based on my body language, that was not satisfactory to me. And I didn't turn around. I went to turn around, just like I jumped out the car with the man at the Popeyes. I went to say something to her, and I said, you know what? It will be a confrontation.
Yes. Absolutely.
And so I didn't say anything. And so maybe that is wrong on me that I didn't, and I'll have to figure out that, you know what I mean? Like, I have to figure out that in how we communicate to try to de-escalate things and whatever. But it's such a bigger issue that we all have to address, because it comes with trauma, stress, socializing, and trying to enforce some power. That's where all this comes from. And these are the symptoms, because we don't address the bigger issues. Because people shouldn't be raising children as single parents. That is not the way that this should be. And if indeed you are, you're supposed to have the support that you need so you can be the best as an adult, and then the children can be the best as children.
Right. Well, thank you.
Oh, we appreciate your call.
I just wanted to have a great weekend.
Yeah, have a great day. I mean, that's important.
Thank you.
Thank you. Everyone, I mean, that's the truth of the matter. If we don't understand from whence these things come, or we just live in trauma, and we're not even aware that we're traumatized. Thanks for your patience. Great morning to you.
Good morning, Ms. Ramsey.
Good morning.
Good to see you.
Thank you. It's good to be seen.
Have a great day.
You there?
Yep.
Okay, give us a little volume so we can hear you.
I think I got a bad connection.
You got a bad connection? You want to call back?
Sure.
Okay, call back because I want to hear what you have to say. So while we're waiting for the call back, let me let you know. Michael J. Harlan did a piece, and he states in his article, the curse of slavery has left an intergenerational legacy of trauma and poor health for African Americans. African Americans experience much higher rates of poverty, unemployment, and negative health outcomes compared to whites in the United States. He wrote that intergenerational cultural trauma caused by 300 years of slavery alongside poor economic circumstances and social prejudice has led to the poor state of physical, psychological, and social health among African Americans. He referenced that in his 1952 semi-autobiographical novel, Go Tell It on the Mountain, the esteemed African-American author James Baldwin asked the question, quote, could a curse come down so many ages? Did it live in time or in the moment? In my work, I argue that the curse of African American slavery cannot be underestimated. The trauma of enslavement has been carried by African Americans through the generations and generations and is currently shown in many of the health problems experienced by a significant portion of African American population in the United States. Mr. Harlan's research focuses on how intergenerational trauma provides an important explanation for the persistence of health problems among African Americans, complementary to the more apparent negative impact of poverty and prejudice on health. So, if we understand that we have been traumatized, that we walk in trauma, again, I don't believe that we have looked at it that way, but I'm imploring us today to realize and to look at and to assess that if indeed we are, and I know that we are, in every aspect of this society, whether it is directly on you, whether that means that you've directly experienced crime and violence, you have created a component of trauma. You've been infused into trauma. So that's for, and I'll give a prime example as to how we are in neighborhoods in Michigan, in Detroit specifically. So you have these great little enclaves of all these historic districts and all these supposed to be more affluent areas, and they might be for maybe a 10-block component and the like, but everything around it is traumatized. So how do you live in this little enclave where everyone's home might be $200,000, $300,000 and up, but if you go 3 to 4 blocks on either side, that house might be $20,000. That house might be $30,000. That might be a duplex. Those might be, and you have these transient communities. So everyone is walking in and out of the community. You don't think that you're impacted by everything around you. You think that you've just created this insular space where at some point what is happening on the external components will not have an impact on you. That is what you believe. So many of us live in that false sense that, oh yes, so when I do better, I can live in the city, but I'll move in Indian Village. And I'll move in Sherwood Forest or Palmer Park or Palmer Woods, or you all know the Bagley area, all these so-called associated Sherwood, for all these better neighborhoods. But in the midst of being in this better neighborhood, everything around you, if it is traumatized, it immediately and at some point in some way has an impact on you because you don't live in a silo. We're not isolated in where we are. You might have some inclusion at some point, but you got to drive out the block. You got to get out the house to get in your car, to get to transportation, to get there. You have to interact with everyone else in this world once you get up out of your space. And so if you don't begin to address those issues right now that plague all of us, then you won't be okay. As the opening quote stated, what did it say? What did he say? I'm going to give it to you again. Those who make peaceful revolution impossible make violent revolution inevitable. So the peaceful component is fair and just, adequate housing, adequate employment, fair and just laws, adequate city services, social support. And maybe that's just the ideology. Maybe it's the ideology behind this perceived democracy, and that if we keep believing that that is aspirational, but at some point it has to go back on us to say this is what it is. But maybe we just don't understand what that charge is for us being in black America, our own America. But we have to consistently teach those that don't look like us. There's a quick clip I want to share. If Sean will get that queued up for me. We don't have to watch it in its entirety. It's about 22 minutes or such. But this is an amazing clip, and I think it's very interesting. It is James Baldwin back at Florida conference where he is teaching the community at large about black folk. I want you to take a look. We'll stop about 10 minutes in because we're up. We only probably have about 15 more minutes for the show. But I want us to at least get the first 10 minutes of it. Let's take a look.
At 9:30. Now stay tuned for Florida Forum. WCKT News presents Florida Forum, a weekly examination of topics of interest to the people of South Florida. This week's guest on Florida Forum is novelist playwright James Baldwin. Now sitting in for the vacationing Don Fisher, here is your moderator, Tom Miller.
Good evening. National attention has been focused on the problems of the American Negro for the past several weeks. Major civil rights legislation from President Kennedy is now before Congress. Huge demonstrations have been held across the country. Violence has erupted in many places. Last week on Florida Forum, we discussed the racial situation with Governor George Wallace of Alabama, who tried unsuccessfully to bar the entrance of 2 Negro students to the University of Alabama. This week, we have invited author and playwright James Baldwin to express his views in this growing controversy. Mr. Baldwin is the best-selling author of several books that reflect on racial conflict. He has offered his intellectual and moral support to the cause of the American Negro. And tonight, he has interrupted his schedule in Puerto Rico, where he is writing a play to answer questions from our panel and studio audience. Questioning Mr. Baldwin tonight will be WCKT newsman Al Dempsey and Dr. Charlton Thibault, chairman of the History Department of the University of Miami. There will also be questions from our studio audience after this message. To begin tonight's program, we'll ask Mr. Baldwin to state briefly if he feels the racial conflict in Alabama and Mississippi could happen here in Florida.
Well, in my view, which is the view I think of most American Negroes, or the experience of most American Negroes, the situation in Alabama and Mississippi, which is spectacular and surprises the country, is nationwide. Not only could it happen in Florida, it could happen in New York or Chicago or Detroit or anywhere there's a significant Negro population. Because until today, all of the Negroes in this country, in one way or another, in different fashions, north or south, are kept in what is in effect prison. In the north, one lives in ghettos, and in the south, the situation is so intolerable as to become sinister, not only for Mississippi, or for Alabama, or for Florida, but for the whole future of this country. White people are surprised, I think, at the vehemence of Negro feeling and the depths of the danger. And I don't think it has caught any Negro by surprise. One has been in a terrible situation for a very, very long time.
Now to our panel, Mr. Dempsey.
Well, why could it happen? Why does it have to be violence? Why can't it be something other than violence?
Well, and part of the reason, one is doing one's best to avoid violence. But one of the reasons that it could happen that way is because for so long, for 100 years, the American Republic in general has ignored and denied the whole situation that Negroes have operated within. To be a source of cheap labor, for example, north or south, is to be, in effect, oppressed. Now, the oppression is bad enough, but the myth that the country is created about the objects of the oppression, the myth about the Negro being happy in his place, is something the Republic has managed to believe. And so that in addition to the fact of oppression, one has also the fact that within the country for 100 years there's been a way of life occurring in the country which most of the country knows nothing about. And this is reflected, for example, in the way Negroes talk to each other. It's a kind of language which does not really exist on what we like to think of as a major level of the American culture.
Right, but hasn't there been a lethargy on the part of the American Negro for that 100-year period too, along with the white supremacy attitude?
I don't think so, no. I think that that's, again, part of the myth. One's got to remember, after all, this may sound very rude, but you got to remember who wrote the history books and toward what end. I have never known a lethargic Negro. I've known a great many demoralized Negroes, but that is not the same thing. The truth is, the Negroes have been fighting for this 100 years to obtain their rights, but and the country has ignored it. And the technique of the country has mainly been to accommodate it or to contain it, but never really to change the situation. And what has happened in our time, in these last few years, is that it's no longer possible to contain it. And the technique of accommodation has broken down. For the first time, really, the situation is now in the open, and no American can ignore it, as has been true up until, let us say, 1954.
All right, well, why did it happen? Why do you think it happened in 1954?
Well, for one thing, what happened in the South is that when the Supreme Court desegregated schools, or tried to desegregate schools, the South, which until that time had really ignored pleas on the part of the NAACP or responsible Negro leaders to do something about creating a situation in the South. They were not asking for the end of desegregation, but to honor the separate but equal clause. And the schools in the South were not equal. Now, this meant, after 54, that the South, which had ignored the necessities on the part of Negroes to be educated, suddenly leapt into that breach and started building schools for Negroes to keep the schools segregated. And this meant, in effect, that if I were a college president in the Deep South at a state college, that I had lost my position. I could no longer bargain. I no longer had to go to the governor to get a new dormitory or a new chemistry lab. The governor was all too anxious to give me a new chemistry lab. That meant that I had no longer any effect, no power whatever. I couldn't guarantee the docility of my students. The bargaining table had suddenly disappeared. This is what really happened, I think.
Well, that was 1954. This is 1963. All of a sudden we have violence. That's what we're talking about here. Are Negro leaders, and let's consider you one of the Negro leaders, are Negro leaders encouraging conditions of violence?
No responsible Negro leader can possibly. All the people I work with and know are working as hard as they know how to channelize an energy which they know is there in order for it not to become violence. But to be candid, there is something amazing, really, in the fact that it is not, that Negroes have not been violent sooner. No. There is something very impressive, in my view, in the ways in which Negroes have managed to deal with this situation, and the kind of discipline, the interior discipline demanded of an adolescent to sit in and to boycott and to undergo all the things one's got to go and undergo is an extraordinary thing. And if it were true that this was a new Negro that he'd never been seen before, that would be a miracle. And what has really happened is that these people have been coming a long, long time. And in the 30s, for example, when people like Roy Wilkins were in the South as hobos, trying to organize unions, and being beaten and clubbed and murdered, the Republic ignored all this. But every Negro child growing up knew something about it. It is a Republic, I repeat, that has been captured by its own myth of the subservient Negro, and now is surprised to discover that the myth was never true.
Dr. Tebow.
Mr. Baldwin, are you saying that you think possibly if separate but equal facilities had been provided for Negroes that none of this might have happened?
No, I'm not saying that at all.
I didn't think you meant to.
No, I didn't mean to suggest that. But I did mean to suggest that the NAACP at that point was not at that point trying to change a law, really, but doing what Negro leaders are always trying to do, which is to try to save the children, to invest the children with morale. And you can't teach a child if the situation in which he's studying is intolerable. And we all know that. Now, it is also true that you cannot really, no Negro child who's going to a segregated school, which may have cost millions of dollars, is fooled about why he's there. He's there because white people want him there and no place else. And that is, you cannot educate a child in that context either. Do you see?
It seems to me also that while you are asking white people to change their estimate of the Negro, to raise their estimate of the Negro, you are also saying to the Negro that he ought to do something to raise his estimate of himself. Isn't that true?
Well, it's one of the great problems, let me put it this way, of being an American Negro in the first place, that you are taught, really, the entire weight of the Republic teaches you to despise yourself. All the standards you look, when you open your eyes in the world and look out at it, there is nothing reflecting you. As far as we can tell, for example, from television programs, there are no Negroes in the country at all, or from most Hollywood productions. The country has arbitrarily declared that kinky hair and dark skin, wide nose, and big lips is a hideous thing to be afflicted with. Now, the Negro parent, in this case, I say I'm the Negro parent, has to use everything he can find to counteract the Republic's attempt to diminish this child. It is inevitable, then, that by the time a boy becomes 20 or a girl becomes 20, they are in great battle inside to release themselves from what the country calls them. You see? Now, this estimate of oneself is a very difficult thing, to change. But this is part of the battle. One has got to do that. And incidentally, or by no means incidentally, I think that white Americans have misunderstood something else. They seem to assume that I live in a segregated society, and they don't realize that they live in a segregated society, that we do, and that the white child is really just as victimized by this peculiar medieval system as any Negro child. And what is worse for the white child doesn't know it. And his whole attitude toward the world and toward reality is very romantic.
If I may add one more question, why are you as doubtful as you are about what liberals are going to do for the cause of the Negro?
Well, because I've...
Everyone, I just wanted to give you a little inclination, a little experience in that amazing clip. That was back in 1963. And that was compliments of the show called Florida Forum. It was WCKT in Miami in 1963. But did you hear? So much of that, I believe, shaped what we talked about today. I'm going to get you these last callers in. But I wanted to make a point of what one of the statements was from the questions of statements. Asking the white man, was James Baldwin asking the white man to raise his estimate of the Negro, but for the Negro to raise his estimate of himself. Thanks for your patience. Good morning to you.
Oh, right. I like James Baldwin. He's a very good critical thinker.
Yes.
Emmett Till Memorial Sign was shot up again 35 days after it was replaced.
Wow.
The farmers, black farmers, are being, through the government, of course, they're being left out of the billion-dollar marijuana industry.
Yes.
And so the history repeats. White man's not going to change because for him to change would take away his game. So we have to understand that racism is economics thing. Yeah. As long as they can keep you dumb, numb, and thinking less of yourself, then that's more profit for him and his family and his communities.
Yes.
So, you have to change your thinking. I always say that.
Yes.
Take the chains off your brain.
Yes.
And collectively do some things.
Yes. Yes, I totally agree. And as it pertains to cannabis, if we don't understand how to beat them at their game, that's the whole point. So guess what? Black Farmers Association, I have outreach to them right now through CASE. At the end of the day, sometimes you have to lay dead and play crazy, right?
Yeah.
So guess what? If they believe that you can't farm hemp, if you aren't capable of farming cannabis, then you, as organizations and political entities in those states, in those cities, in those municipalities, that's the beautiful part about the law. These ordinances are created by the municipalities. So if you don't understand the politics in government, then you can't make the government work for you. So that means that if there's an ordinance on the books, it needs to include a social equity component that says, guess what? I am from this region. I farm in this region. So whoever you're going to let come into this region, they have to partner with someone who's from this region to be able to serve as a mentor and to be able to produce and get a percentage of those revenues, at least for a 2 or 3 year period, to then be able to branch out and do it on their own. But you can't keep sitting here acting like they're just going to give it to us, because they've never given it to us, because it was never for them to give to us. That was never the plan for them to give to us. And we were supposed to never realize how to get it on our own.
That's right. That's right. Black farmers shut out of a $10 billion, and we talking about medical marijuana industry.
Come on.
The first one on the book that's supposed to be legal. So, like you said, if we don't learn how to do anything collectively, group economics, and the list goes on, and what we have to do, then, yeah, they'll always play their little petty games to keep us out and keep us insane. So I'm going to hang up and let your next caller come in.
All right, we appreciate you so much. Thank you. And on the point of cannabis, everyone, I shared with you all yesterday, if you are on Wednesday, if you were watching Cannabis, that hemp now is forecast to be a $20 billion industry by 2026. And specifically in Michigan, there is a pilot program for hemp. And the licensing on that is only $6,000. We can't figure that out? Thanks for your patience. Great morning to you. Caller, you there? You're the last caller for this morning. No?
Good morning, Collette. How are you?
Oh, good morning.
Yes. I just wanted to make a comment about what the white guy asked Baldwin. He asked him about it being done through violence. He said, how come everything y'all do got to be done through violence?
Yes.
And me being a historian, that kind of tripped me out because the Europeans got this country by violence.
Yes.
They maintained slavery for 370 years by violence.
Yes.
They maintained Jim Crow for 155 years by violence.
Mm-hmm.
So to hear him ask Baldwin that dumb question, that kind of tripped me out, you know. But they used to putting out negative. He was asking about how they looked at black with big lips, wide nose, and all of this. But they had to start that propaganda program in reference to black people because they had already looked back in history and knew brothers knew about all science and math and astrology, and it was they who knew nothing.
Yes.
So to make it appear that he was on the same level as the brother, he had to put out negative things about the brother during that 370-year history and that 155 years of Jim Crow. So now he done stole all the brothers' intel.
Yes.
You understand? All the ones who taught it and knew of it had died off over those slavery period years.
Yes.
And he raised the white man raised his black children to believe that he created and introduced all these things. And so this was locked into black people's psyche. They actually believe that.
Yes.
And you know, so that was part of his plan to destroy you, was to erase your entire history. And as ignorant as he is, he really believes he has been successful.
Yes.
That's what's so sad about him. That's what makes him sick. Because he's now a slavery to being a fanatic.
Yes.
To fantasy. He's a slave to fantasy because he has never been what we were.
Nice.
And thanks for taking my call.
Thank you for calling. Couldn't have ended the conversation on a better note. At the end of the day, you have to understand what motivates the entity, motivates the masses, that creates this democracy that we live in. And when you understand that better, you can best govern yourselves. You don't have to live in the trauma of this America. You can understand it for what it is and make it work for you. We'll conclude with this quote from our own Martin Luther King Jr., and he states, nonviolence means avoiding not only external physical violence, but also internal violence of spirit. You not only refuse to shoot a man, but you refuse to hate him. I believe the bigger part of that is us understanding who we are, loving ourselves, not hating ourselves, but understanding what was given to us and why it was told to us to be who we are. I pray that our time together has been beneficial to you, that you've been educated, enlightened, and empowered. Make your moments matter, make an impact, make a difference. Look forward to seeing you bright and early next Wednesday morning at 7 a.m. for Cannabis, discussing the business of cannabis. See you then.